In this video, I'll be making my favorite risotto with the best rice I've ever eaten. I'm talking about Carolina Gold. Carolina Gold is a short grain white rice hailing from, you guessed it, North Carolina. It's not to be confused with the Carolina Gold brown rice that's all over supermarkets and actually comes from Texas. The Carolina Gold I'm talking about is grown by Anson Mills. They literally mill it and mail it to you on the same day. This rice is fresh. As soon as this rice arrives at my door, I've got to admit, I'm pretty excited. It's so fresh that they recommend that you freeze it if you're not using it right away. This helps it preserve some of its intense flavor and aroma. This isn't my first rodeo with risotto. I made it once on this channel already, and when I was younger, I used to make it every week. Today I'm making Risotto Milanese, the Northern Italian classic. Normally the provenance of arborio, carnaroli, or viandoni nano rice, I'm breaking with tradition here and using Carolina Gold, largely because Anson Mills recommends it on their website. I like this test because Risotto Milanese is made with just a small handful of a few good ingredients. I'm gonna get to know this rice really quickly. Well, there's no question you have to have good rice. There's one thing that's absolutely essential to having the perfect risotto, and that is chicken stock. I start by filling up a large stock pot with water, then I add 2 raw chicken carcasses, and lastly a tablespoon each of kosher salt and then some cider vinegar. This gets brought down to the lowest of simmers and is just left on the back burner until the next day. The low temperature here preserves the most flavor, and the extended cooking time will release a lot of rich collagen, while the little bit of vinegar helps shuttle minerals from the bones into the liquid. Now normally I keep this covered, but since I want you to see the time lapse, I left the lid off. I just periodically top it off with more water if it starts to evaporate too much. After 24 hours, I've got liquid gold. This gets strained through a chinois or a fine mesh sieve into another large vessel. Once the chicken has been removed, it's time to add the aromatics. Since the cooking time is so long, I hold off on adding any vegetables until the last 1 to 2 hours. Cooking the aromatics for too long can make things a little too intense and sometimes unpleasant. I want to keep this stock fairly versatile, so I won't use carrots to go with the full mirepoix. I'll chop up a couple of ribs of celery and the white part of a leek and add it to the broth. This will simmer for 2 hours until I strain all the vegetables out. At this stage, I'll jar everything up and I should be done. But am I? When I want my broth to really stand out, the best trick is to reinforce it. Grab 2 or more chicken leg quarters and season them thoroughly with salt. Add them to a hot pan with some olive oil, skin side down, and weigh them down a bit. All you want is that skin to render out its fat until it gets crispy. As soon as they're golden, flip them over and add broth until it's 3/4 of the way up the chicken. Once this starts simmering, I'll pop it into an oven for 60 to 75 minutes. That's at 350. This will braise, perfectly cooking the chicken and reinforcing the stock with more chicken flavor and extra collagen. Marry the remaining broth with the new salty, collagen-rich broth and redistribute into storage containers. Your classic Risotto Milanese has 5 main ingredients. 1 minced shallot that's gently sauteed in olive oil. It shouldn't caramelize, and if the pan is too hot, like mine is here, add a dribble of water to cool it down. These should sweat down until they're about translucent. 1 cup of short grain rice that gets added to the sauteed shallot and gently fried in the fat until it begins to stick. 1/4 cup of dry white wine is next. Pinot Grigio, Sauv Blanc, or dry vermouth are good bets, especially if they're from Europe where they're typically drier. 1 large pinch of saffron. This is what really makes a Risotto Milanese. This gets added to our warm broth where it will bloom after about 10 minutes. Once the wine is evaporated, I'll ladle the saffron broth through a sieve to catch the threads. Risotto is all about patience. Once you add the broth, you want to keep stirring the rice. The more the rice begins to cook and the more you stir, the starches come off the outer layers of the rice and thicken the broth. The grains continue to plump up with all the liquid you feed it. Risotto is a skill best developed with practice. You don't want al dente rice. It must be cooked, but a good rice will be tender and slightly yielding when it's ready. As soon as the rice is cooked perfectly and has received the right amount of liquid, it needs to come off the heat. You want it to flow onto the plate, but not be a soup. My trick is to ladle one last bit of hot broth into the risotto seconds before you plate it. Otherwise, as soon as it cools down, it will begin to seize and the starches will clump together. Finish with a drizzle of olive oil, and I know this is likely a mortal sin in Italy, a couple cracks of black pepper. For a dish that is regularly made with butter and so often Parmigiano, I don't miss the dairy at all. The broth is super rich and it's insanely comforting. Does the Carolina Gold hold up to the lofty levels of those other Italian rices? Definitely. It's not as starchy or creamy as some of those, but this dish is unmistakably risotto. Carolina Gold, unlike those, can also be used really well in other applications. Like what? Stay tuned. I've got some more dishes to explore with this amazing rice. Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to see you next time. Bye now.